Welcome back to the channel. Today is a story of history, horror, and enjoyment. And anyway, story about one of my most favorite brands of firearms, Walther. The horror, they were not available in Russia where I was growing, admittedly. I came to US when I was still 17. I went to college here and everything. So I couldn't really own a handgun until 21. But, as you can imagine, most of us have watched James Bond. Many of us in Russia have watched movies about World War II, where the Germans were using Lugers and Walthers, like P38. This is a P1. I couldn't buy a P38 because I couldn't find them by the time I started looking into guns, and they became too expensive. So right now I'm sitting, cleaning and wiping them down. This is what I use right now as a new trial for gun safe storage. And I decided to capture some of this on video. Again, this is not cleaning per se. This is mostly wiping them down, adding some cover protection. I live in Florida. Things are humid in here. And I'm going to try this new liquid. Walthers obviously were very, very famous, especially in Russia, where captured Walthers were often the suppressor host for the reconnaissance troops. They added threads to the barrel, installed a custom-made suppressor sometimes, because 9mm suppressors were not really available in Russia, in Soviet Union at the time, and carried them like this. Often cut down the barrel to much shorter length. I don't know what they did for sights, but that was a very common sidearm, suppressed sidearm for anybody going behind the enemy lines, if you did not know that. So coming to the US obviously had two impacts on me. One is being able to buy guns. Once I was 21, handguns, and being influenced by the movies such as the famous PPK. Well, I know this is not a PPK or PP, this is PPK-S. And it's not even Walther, this is Interarms. But what I could find is what I bought. This is James Bond Impact. Yes, he had the black one. And in some of the movies he had the 7.65 variety. Something like this. This is a Hungarian clone of the Walther PP. Low-end quality in comparison, but just for the concept of seeing what it's like, inexpensive copy was acceptable to me. But let's take a look at the rest of my Walther. I wouldn't call it a collection per se, it's lacking a lot of different items. But I started with a P1 in a more or less acceptable condition. Of course, the gun has been checked for not being loaded. No guns are safe, some of them are unloaded. But always treat a gun as if it's loaded. Then I bought a P22. And this one came with two barrels. This is that weird version that has the 5-inch barrel and a device at the end that's basically just a weight. Because it's not any kind of a muzzle brake or compensator. This is just a regular 5-inch barrel. 22 Walther. Not a bad thing for teaching kids or women with smaller hands as their first gun. Kind of reliable, does not like certain ammunition, but at the time I was shooting mostly CCIs. No gun in my experience has had problems with CCIs, especially the mini-mags. My next purchase was the PPK-S. Interarms 380 variety. So interesting enough, in Europe they call it 9mm quartz for short, because it is a 9mm by 17. In Russia you're going to hear 9 by 17. They know nothing about the quartz part, but again, you know, the American version of the PPK. Not a bad gun, I actually carried it for a while. 380. In my mind, it's the least or the weakest carry caliber you should use. Switch to something else. It is not light. This is a heavy gun. It's all steel, as most of you know. My next purchase, strangely enough, was a Walther relative. This was a brand new Bulgarian Makarov. Cost me $200, oh, so many years ago. 9 by 18 Makarov, or 9mm Makarov. In many ways, the gun was based on the original concept. Again, of course, it's empty, and you cannot do slide manipulation unless you put the safety off. Not a bad gun for what it is, especially once you get the Fab Defense PMG grip. For somebody with larger hands, this thing was biting, just like PPKs. PPKs does bite. Most of the smaller Walthers bite. They create a slight bite or slight cut. I had one time 2 cuts on my hand from that, from 2 sides of the slide, actually from PPKs. 9 by 18, honestly, quite a bit comparable to 380 in power. Not that much more. Variety of ammo is lower, but I'm from Russia. Had to have a Makarov in my collection. It's basically a prerequisite. Next, started looking into newer guns. And my next purchase was a weird one in some ways. Walther PPX. One of my sub $300 guns. 9mm, threaded barrel, 18 round capacity or 16 round capacity, depending on the magazine. Came with a whole set of accessories, extra magazines, all kinds of nice things. It is visibly ugly, but as a gun that you can give to somebody as a first gun at the range, and you're not really going to be afraid of them breaking it per se, why not? It has a fairly good trigger. It is a hammer or semi-hidden hammer gun. It doesn't have double action, single action only, which is kind of a negative part, but for what it is, your first gun or self-defense gun, fairly much acceptable. A few years later, they moved from PPX to the Creed, and Creed honestly is both better looking and better feeling gun. Interesting part, the magazines are exactly the same. I think those are Megar made in Italy, but one of them says PPX at the bottom, the other one says Creed, and those are actually, from what I understand, interchangeable. I don't know if the slides are interchangeable. So let's see. This is a PPX mag. This is a Creed mag. So if you had a PPX and the original Walther package that sent you extra mags, you can use them in your Creed with absolutely no problems, which is what I do. Creed is one of my backup defense guns, that's why it has a light on it. Again, gun under $300 at the time. I think it became so popular that Walther increased the price on it, or the magazine. I was buying from CDNN, those of you that know what the store is. I'm not going to provide the link because I can't. YouTube! Honestly, this looks like PPX married PPQ. Here's the PPQ. Look at the slide comparison. Let me move both of them to the camera focus. You can see that the slides are very similar between the PPQ and Creed. But, of course, we have to talk about the PPQ. This is one of my best guns. This thing has an amazing, absolutely amazing trigger. And even though, honestly, this is a compact size gun, this is a gun that's comparable to Glock 19 in size. Admittedly, not with a long barrel, but it's a very carryable gun. Has 15 round magazine. This one is 17 because it has a 2-round extension. This is a PPQ M2 Navy. Admittedly, it is not a $300 gun, but would you expect that? No. This was their flagship. Right now, their flagship is PDP for the regular guns, not the sport guns. And this thing is one of my few single-hole guns where I can put at least a few rounds into the same hole. Not making them touch, but actually put them into the same hole. Disregard me wiping them off, because again, I'm going to put them back in the safe. That's why I'm wearing gloves, if anybody is asking. And these gloves are very nice, mechanics. This is a great gun, $600. M2, admittedly, I'm fond of the original M1 flaps, not the Mac button. I like ability to drop on both sides because I'm actually a lefty. So I want to be able to drop, just like my hecklers, on both sides. However, cannot do it. It does have the slide release on both sides. Safety is on the trigger. If you were to start and your first gun is going to be a striker, don't buy a Glock, buy a Walther. PPQ or PDP, I think they will serve you much better. It doesn't have the issues with the grip that the Glock does, which can cause issues for the first-time gun buyers. So, and today we're going to finish with the Turkish Walther clone, Walther P99 clone, partially. Canik TP9 series are the Walther clones in so many different ways. And this is a SA model, TP9 SA. This is the first generation. I was going to say this is almost $300 gun, I wish. This is a $330 gun. And because of the single action, its trigger is purely amazing. Is it better than the PPQ? No, but it is very much comparable. I mean, honestly, both of them are excellent guns for your range. Admittedly, Walther is probably going to be considerably more reliable, at least in expectations, than the Canik, or Canik, depending on how you call it. But I like them both. Canik goes to the range more, because I'm not afraid of using and abusing it, including high rate firing, if the range allows it, and other games, so to speak. But other than that, this is my set of Walthers and Walther clones or products. You cannot say that Makarov is a clone. It is basically a relative to the Walther. And some of them are clones. TP9SA is not 100% clone, but it is very, very, very similar. AP765 is a clone. So this is what my collection is. I want to buy a PDP in some future. I am considering PPS if they improve it, but they don't look like they want to be improving that gun for some reason. So just wanted to share. Hopefully it was at least a little bit interesting. Now I get to wipe them all down and put them back in the safe. Thank you for watching. Until the next video.